Hello and welcome back to the UCLA Bruins Insider Podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Ferguson, writer for UCLA on SI. Today we're going to be breaking down UCLA's matchup against Washington, things that UCLA needs to do to win this game, some threats that they have to watch out for, and some players for UCLA who I want to see make a massive impact in this one. But before we get started, I want to thank everyone right now who is listening, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, any of those options. I just want to say thank you, and I appreciate you tuning in for these videos. Without further ado, let's get right into it. So entering this game, Washington is 12-11. They haven't had the best season. They've lost a few games since the UCLA matchup earlier this season. As we know for the Bruins, they are right now 16-7. Right now, coming off a loss to Indiana, they were able to get some momentum back against Rutgers. But overall, the Bruins are not where they want to be, especially what's up next. Michigan, Michigan State, Illinois, 3 games in a row where they are severe underdogs. But UCLA has overall this season been used to being the favorite heading into their matchups. This is no different. They have a 77.3% chance of winning this game according to ESPN Analytics. But still, there's a lot of mismatches that UCLA might struggle with. In my last one, talking about why Washington is a must-win for the UCLA Bruins, I kind of talked about how Hani Steinbach could really hurt UCLA when they met earlier this season when UCLA was able to win 82-80. He had 29 points. I think he missed one shot and had 10 rebounds on the Bruins. But UCLA now obviously has started to get some more defensive momentum, especially after the Rutgers game. Obviously, they struggled defensively against Indiana, but what team doesn't struggle against Indiana? But to kind of start off, I want to go over some broad general stats. UCLA this season's averaging 78.9 points per game. They're giving up 69.7. They're shooting 47% from the field. They're averaging 6.5 assists, and they're also averaging 33 rebounds per game. From those numbers, I really do want to see more rebounding. 33, that ranks them in the bottom quadrant of the entire league and nation, whatever you want to put it. The Bruins have not been a good rebounding team this season whatsoever. They had 35 against Rutgers, to Rutgers 30, which was a step in the right direction. Still not enough rebounds to be considered a serious rebounding team whatsoever. On Washington's side, they're averaging 78.1 points per game while shooting 45% from the field. They're also giving up 73.3 points a game. They are averaging 5.7 steals per game, and then they're also averaging 38 rebounds per game. And obviously, we're going to see Hani Steinbach probably make an impact. This season, he's averaging a crazy 11.5 rebounds per game. Compare that to Eric Daly Jr., who's UCLA's leading rebounder, who's averaging 5.8. You're starting to see an issue kind of start to arise just from looking at those two numbers. So kind of on the topic of Washington, here are 2 players who I really think. Obviously, I mentioned Hani Steinbach. He's averaging 17.8 points per game while shooting 53.7% from the field. I think he's 7 foot, so he's going to be a tough matchup for UCLA no matter what. And Wesley Yates III, I believe he had a pretty good game against UCLA last time they met. He had 12 points. He shot 4 for 10 from the 3-point line, and we have seen how teams have gotten hot against the Bruins, from the 3-point line. And Wesley Yates is a 40% shooter on the season, so again, that opportunity for him to have a game similar to Nick Dorn, Caden Powers, and Rutgers in that first half. That could very much easily happen to UCLA if they're not careful with Wesley Yates. I believe that Donovan Dent or Trent Perry will probably switch off against him. We're not sure if we're going to get Sky Clark back. He still is listed as questionable for this matchup. But either way, I really like how UCLA's guards have been playing. I know they kind of took a little step back against Rutgers. Still Donovan Dent, 13 points, 11 assists. Can't really complain about that. But overall, I want to see more scoring from them, and the defensive side of things also get hot, right? Nick Dorn, obviously we saw how well he did, 26 points against UCLA. Caden Powers in that first half, he wasn't expected to have a good game. UCLA wasn't planning on it, but still he had 18 points in a half of basketball, was shooting the lights out. And if Wesley Yates is able to kind of get that momentum, I think UCLA could be in a really bad spot during this game. And more on Hani Steinbeck, I mean, 29 points. I think it was like 10 for 11 from the field, somewhere around that. But he is going to be an absolute beast for UCLA. We obviously don't have the length anywhere. I know Xavier Booker is 6'11", but he is lacking that athleticism to really stop Steinbach. And this is not a slight to, Booker. He has played great basketball, 24 points against Rutgers, 10 for 11, 4 for 4 from 3. That was incredible, but still, defensively, he's playing a role that he's not necessarily used to, I would say. As that natural forward, having to play the 5 is going to be unnatural. And Hani Steinbach knows that. So he's going to try to make life as difficult as possible for Booker. I don't see Booker really making a dent rebounding in this one, especially with Steinbach averaging 11.5 rebounds per game. 7 foot physical. That is going to hurt UCLA. So we might see Mick Cronin mix up the lineup a little bit more than he wants to. But still, either way, it's going to be difficult to watch how UCLA kind of navigates this throughout the game because, the Bruins, the previous matchup, UCLA was up a good amount in that game. But then kind of in the second half, we saw Steinbach really come in and just tear things up for UCLA. He had I think had most of his points in that second half. And the score got really close. I think Donovan Dent was able to finish the game off with some free throws. But again, too close for comfort. And especially entering their next few games for UCLA, they're going to want to prevent a close game from happening. A loss here, too, is, like I said, is going to tank their season. But they want to have this game to be a convincing victory. I think a 10-point victory here is probably going to be ideal. And that starts with slowing down Steinbach and really figuring out how they could, trap him, double him, whatever you need to do to slow him down to make sure he is not a threat. But also some context for that game when he had a good game earlier this season. Steinbach had missed a few games, so UCLA didn't really know what they were going to get entering that game, but now they do. So that might cause some trouble for UCLA, or that might benefit UCLA, in this game especially. But moving on to some players who I want to kind of highlight for UCLA, who I think will play the biggest role in, making this a decisive victory. Obviously, Donovan Dent, Tyler Bilodeau, either of those two, I think their scoring is going to be very much needed. If Donovan Dent can still, facilitate at that high level, 13 assists against Purdue, 11 assists against Rutgers the game before, I think he has a really good chance of doing the same thing here. It might be a little hard to get those assists coming from Booker, but I think if Bilodeau is able to spread the floor and kind of capitalize on that, Trent Berry is also going to play a role in opening things up for UCLA. Eric Daly Jr., obviously, he's going to score at a high rate in this one, I feel like, as well. But I think if Dent can really prioritize this facilitating this one, as well as drive to the board, get Steinbach into some foul trouble because of how aggressive Dent is playing, I think UCLA has a really good chance of, winning this game by 10, 15 points either way. I also want to talk about, I talked about Xavier Booker, 24 points again against Rutgers, 4 for 4 from 3. I know Mick Cronin's going to want to see him take more shots in this game for sure. In his last press conference, he said that an open 3 from Booker is better than a contested 2 down low. And, if that's Bilodeau, Daly, I don't know who exactly he was talking about, but he wants to see the ball get passed out behind the arc to, Booker more often because he has shown to be a very good shooter. I believe he's shooting around 40% from 3 this season. And that is something that UCLA desperately needs. Without Sky Clark, that 3-point shooting needs to come from somewhere. And I know it felt like throughout the season that you'd hold your breath when Booker would kind of pull up from 3. But how he played against Rutgers kind of tells me otherwise. But if we get more volume from Booker, I think he has a big game here. Again, the matchup with Steinbach might be troubling at first. So I don't know how much, Booker is actually going to play in this one because we know how, Mick Cronin operates, with his, his lineups against these bigger teams like Washington. We might see Booker only play like 15, 20 minutes in this one, or he could play the entire game depending on how he's playing. But ultimately that goes down to Cronin and what he sees. If we see Steinbach kind of go on a run where, Booker is absolutely lost, I could see Booker go on the bench very fast in this one. But still, I think Booker, the way he's playing, his physicality has been great lately. Again, forcing Steinbach into foul trouble is going to be huge in this one. And I think Booker can do that. Obviously, Daly Jr. will probably play a role. Bilodeau, both of them like to kind of be physical in the paint. And if they can accomplish that, I think Steinbach will be in some situations that he does not necessarily want to be in. But to kind of round off the list, the last player I really want to see UCLA, or I want to see who has a good game against Washington for UCLA. I think that's going to be, it's kind of a sleeper pick, but Brandon Williams. I know he's 7'8". He's going to have that, height disadvantage, but he has proven to be a very physical player. I think he's like 240 something. He's definitely a bigger guy for UCLA who could be a very imposing threat. I think, we saw that against Gonzaga for a few possessions before he went down with that ankle injury. He was really bullying, Ike, and, Braden Huff in that game. And I thought that could have been the turning point for UCLA if they were to win that game. It would have come off a Brandon Williams, absolutely being so physical in the paint that Gonzaga has no other options on, offense to kind of score. I think it could be a very similar story in this one, especially if, what I said about Booker, if, we see Steinbach get a lot of momentum building, I think that will cause Mick Cronin to, want to play Brandon Williams. Not necessarily Steven Jamerson. I know Jamerson has been decent for UCLA, but still he has struggled as of late. And I think the safer pick in that situation has got to be Brandon Williams. Again, 6'8", 240, not the tallest player, but he still provides that, that power down low to really, wear down Steinbach and any of those other big guys I talked about for the Huskies. But to round things off, I'll kind of give a little bit of a game prediction of what I think is going to happen. I think it'll be a very close first half game. I think Steinbach is going to kind of tear things up early. I don't think his impact is going to come later in the game, just because he knows he can have his way with UCLA if he wants to. And that's going to force Mick Cronin to have to make some big time adjustments at halftime, whether that means, again, Brandon Williams starting over Booker to open up that second half, or whatever it takes. I think UCLA has been exceptional at kind of addressing issues in the second half. Not so much against Indiana, but again, that was a hard game because, if you give up a team, 30 points in the first half, the second half talks are not going to be that, there's not going to be a lot of motivation, I guess, to really change things up because whatever's working is going to work. Against Indiana, we saw what worked in the first half, and Indiana just made better adjustments down the stretch in that second half and in overtime. So for this game, I think it's going to be, a very fast first half for UCLA. I think UCLA still will be able to outscore them because we have seen UCLA kind of be better at, taking advantage of, those turnovers, defensively rebounding. UCLA has been better, especially if they can limit Steinbach. I think UCLA will have a good, time on the other side of the court. That being said, I think the second half will slow down a lot for UCLA. We've seen all season where the UCLA Bruins start off very hot in the first half, 50 points against Rutgers, and then they kind of dwindle out throughout the game. And, there's a lot of factors that contribute to that. I'm not saying that, it's a big issue, but when you kind of look at everything that's going on for UCLA, it kind of becomes clear that the Bruins really need to work on figuring out how to maintain the minute balance going forward. Sky Clark, Trent Perry, Donovan Dent, Trent Perry, they're all playing 40 plus minutes per game, and that's just not sustainable. But again, I think UCLA will win by at least 15 in this one, 10 points, if they can really keep Steinbach under wraps. But anyways, that's all I have today. I really appreciate everyone who's listening. And as always, 4 is up and have a good day.